Well, I was saying that this object, this magnetic object, has
right.
changed. It changed something in these, in both the Earth objects, Earth's ancient objects, and those objects that are orbiting around the Earth.
Okay. Now, it's changing the orbits, and the magnetic fields, things like that.
Well, no, not the orbit. For a very long, they've been monitoring the signals, pulses and so forth coming off these objects, their radiation levels and so forth. Well, for the last 4 years, those energy levels have been exponentially increasing, including those devices in the Earth.
Oh,
Jesse,
now, is it a frequency change that they're seeing?
Now, I can't give you definitive, I can't narrow it down that much, but both the radiation, the emissions of energy but in these objects has been increasing for the last 4 years, and it is increasing as this object is coming closer to Earth.
Now, you had mentioned on the last show that our shields are weaker. And I had noticed that we had a CME. It wasn't that strong that came over our night before last, and it gave us a quake on the North Pole and the South Pole, not exactly on the poles, but on that section of the Earth. And the CME didn't seem to be strong enough. It wasn't one of those giant blasts that you see out there. And as it passed over the Earth, I was watching it, and we had a Greenland Sea quake, and then way down, almost in the Arctic, on the same fault zone. Now, the first thing that popped into my mind was what you had said. Are our fields becoming that weak to where that type of impact can do that much crustal displacement?
Actually, they are. They are. It would appear, if you look over this through trending or through its history, they are in fact collapsing, it would seem. They're very weak. The magnetic fields around the Earth, magnetosphere is just it seems to be dissolving. Every day it seems to be dissolving. So it's slowly dissipating, which is not so good for the core of the Earth because the core of the Earth is controlling that.
Right. Now, the solar stream controls the entire engine of the whole way the whole thing works. The magnetosphere is picking up the solar energy, transferring it in through the poles into the Earth, making the motors, electric motor we're dealing with here.
That's right. And something is happening.
Is it a decrease in solar activity causing because they say technically if your solar stream stopped, your magnetic fields would collapse. Is it because solar activity is decreasing, or is it because of something else?
I think that we are intimately tied to the sun's power, and our dynamo is losing RPMs. The dynamo that actually causes that, creates that magnetosphere, is failing, or is certainly slowing down in RPMs. They are beginning to print articles discussing the speed of the Earth's core, and they made a wrong estimate some years back, and so that speed was way off target. As they've discovered, with newer technologies, we can peer deeper and deeper into the Earth. And they have, now this is on the public side, they have admitted that they made a huge mistake in the speed of the core of the Earth. But they probably did that and published that to compensate for what's actually happening, which is our dynamo is slowing down every day.
Oh, well, what does that mean? But we know that it's going to weaken our shields. I guess that alone would be enough for major concern, because if our shields weaken because of our dynamo is weakened, but the solar stream is not, and we have the influence of these outside bodies coming in, it's just not a good scenario.
No, it's not.
Any way you talk about it. Michael, I don't know if you were listening to the show. I think it was yesterday. A lady had called in and had dreamed about these two objects in space, Earth and another object approaching, and the lightning transfer. Now, she hadn't heard anything about it but she said that she was listening to either our show or Brother Paul's show, and when you called in about this, and she said she hit the floor because it was one of the dreams that she had kept. You know how you forget a lot, but this one just stayed in her mind. And when you said those things, she said she was overwhelmed because you described exactly what she saw. And do you see that electrical transfer of this lightning being one of the major problems that we're going to see?
It's a big worry. In fact, I think people should understand that the nations understand that first there are otherworldly powers. In other words, they know about the other dimensions. They are quantifying information by the nanoseconds in projecting probabilities of their next move, that with coercement from these other powers, which we know them as principalities and powers in the air. They just know it on an intimate level. To us, it's a word, it's an idea, it's something non-tangible at the moment. So it's somewhat amorphous. It has no form or shape to us, but they know it intimately and have dealt with the manifestations and the warnings and the orders from this other side. So for individuals to have those dreams, warnings, as they would be, it's not really surprising due to what I've been exposed to. But the nations are preparing. They know these electrical discharges can wreak havoc on the surface of the earth. They already know this. There's nothing they can do about it except to attempt to circumvent it through some type of communication and so forth with those entities that they know about.
And they know they can try to mitigate the problem, but there's really nothing, like you said, nothing they can do about it.
No.
What do you see? You told us about watch for the changing colors in the skies. I think maybe a lot of times in the sunset, things like that.
Mm-hmm.
What do you see the first impacts that we will know? In other words, we got the skies changing, extreme lightning. Is that to be tied in with these straight line winds you're talking about?
Yeah, that'll happen too. And you know what, Jesse, the first model that was developed in the 1980s, the first indication everyone was looking for were birds dying, and then the fish dying, and then fish beaching themselves. Now, this was in a computer model in the 80s, what to look for at the approach of these objects that were spotted in 1985. And so birds are largely affected by magnetic changes. They're also affected by neurological conditions that are caused by increased energies or fluctuations of energies in the atmosphere. Now, we're walking on the ground. We can't actually feel that energy all the time. Birds flying at higher altitudes can certainly be affected by magnetosphere changes and fluctuations in energy in the magnetosphere. Certain parts of the Earth, which are on ley lines, and those offset to the angles of the ley lines, people will likely find dead animals. They'll find a correlation between the ley lines and a lot of dead animals dropping over dead. And so they give all these explanations, of course, why they're dying. But the magnetosphere is affected greatly by these approaching objects, affected greatly. And at some point, we will entertain high-energy transfers from one body to the other.
Right. Now, how can like Anthony, I think you're still with us. I mean, it doesn't seem that our electrical grid could stand this for very long. You know, we're looking at one of the indications of this happening. It looks like an overload on a Carrington event on a mega scale, mega scale Carrington event.
Are you speaking with me, Justin?
When you talk about that much energy,
Is that directed to me, Jesse?
Yes.
Hello?
And Anthony, yeah, both of you guys.
Oh, and
Anthony
by the way,
first.
how you doing, Anthony? It's good to meet you. I'm sorry I didn't say that before.
No, it's great to meet you as well. I think we have some dovetailing information here. Yes, I think, Jesse, we're moving into, definitely an overload situation electrically, but I want to give Michael the floor, but I have one quick question for Michael. Are you speaking in terms of pyramids when you're describing the Earth-based structures that are being affected by these energies?
Well, the pyramids and also some of the ancient ruins, they contain obelisks. And in most cases, they will keep these, they keep them guarded. The ruins are guarded, but a lot of people miss the fact that some of the stones of what they think are stones are actually devices. They're just at a massive scale. It's hard to identify them as a component to something. It would be compared to a transistor being taken out of a circuit board and then left on the ground somewhere. But they know how to put these. They know what these parts do. They know what this ancient technology does. The problem is they can't harness the energy source that activates them. And it just so happens that this external energy is beginning to activate these things. And they're going to time everything just right to harness what they need to accomplish what they need to accomplish with the dimensions.
I have a quick question, Jesse, and then I'm just going to let you take over there. But, Michael, do you have a timetable? I think that's what a lot of people tend to focus in on.
Yeah, well, to be honest, I can't give a timetable. I can give you what to look for. Of course, we have the dead birds, but the sky changing colors in all different manner of colors, which could be taken as an aurora and so forth, at sunset where they're most visible, will be one of the predominant signs right before the large energy transfers. We will see things before that, like high winds, abrupt storms, lightning storms that are probably 100 times more powerful than we've experienced in the past. But when the energy gets at a certain point, a tipping point, the skies will become very charged, causing very beautiful colors to swim through the sky. That will be at that point. People will know they're in. We're there. We're at that tipping point. So.
Jesse, can I ask one quick question?
There's no ETA, right? There's no estimated time of arrival or any way to project that compared to observations from, say, 7 years ago to now, or anything, Michael?
Jesse, when they discovered 8 large bodies, and one was in 72, one was in 1980, and the other was in 1983. When they discovered and confirmed these large bodies, the greater half of them did not seem to follow any type of physics. In other words, they were taking their own route.
Right, random.
Does that help answer? And that's why a timeline cannot be given, and the calculations are being made. I mean, they can track movements and so forth, but on a few of them, it's useless to do that. So you have to look for the signs in the earth to determine.
Well, that it's interesting because I read an article to where they had discovered, they were looking into the inner workings of the solar system, the Milky Way, and they have found a group of stars that are doing what you're saying. There's no pattern. They don't seem to be emanating from a certain area. They are escaping from that, and it's very random. There's no way to project what they're doing. It sounds a lot like what you're saying there, but have you seen that report?
Yeah, I'm privy to portions of that, and you're right. They have no, as we know physics, they have no pattern to them. So no mathematical